Years ago, I had a little Ford Ranger, which was a very reliable truck. But one day it got to where I was going to work, went out to crank the truck to go to work, and it wouldn't crank. So I checked the alternator and I checked the battery. The alternator was working fine. It was producing over 12 volts like it should. And the battery was, of course, was dead. So I charged the battery, put it back in the truck. The truck crunked just fine. But the next morning, when I went out to go to work again, the truck once again wouldn't crank. So this time I figured I'll go buy a battery. Maybe that battery, even though it's charged up, maybe it has a bad cell. So I go and buy a battery, and I put a brand new battery in my truck, and everything seems fine. But the next morning, bless God, I go out to go to work, and the truck wouldn't crank again. And at that point, I realized that the major components were operating as they should, but it was what they call in the mechanics world a parasitic draw. In other words, there was something that was killing my battery, something that was draining my battery down overnight. And to make a long story short, it turns out that I found inside of my glove box was a light that had a switch that when you close the glove box, it's supposed to turn off. But that switch, that little button had malfunctioned, and so it would leave that tiny little light on all night. And that tiny little light would drain my battery so that my vehicle wouldn't start that next morning. And I want you to know that life is the same way. Listen, sometimes we are connected. As we talk about being connected, we're connected to the right source, but there's still a drain on our lives. There's a parasitic draw in our lives. And we have to find out what that parasitic draw is. We're connected, right? The alternator was charging, the battery was good, but something else was pulling down the power. And life is that way. And I want to share a scripture with you from the Old Testament book, Song of Solomon, and chapter 2, verse 15. Listen to what it says. Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. Listen, that analogy is telling you something. That analogy is an agricultural analogy that God is using for us to understand life. That even when you are plugged into the right source, you still got to watch the drains. You have to disconnect some things or correct some things or fix some things that even though power is coming in, it's draining power out. The analogy is that of a person who owns a vineyard. And it says the vineyard is in a stage of bloom, which means it's about to produce fruit. And those plants are pretty high at that point. But notice what it says. It says, catch for us the little foxes. Now notice this. If you were the vineyard owner and you looked out on your field, the plants are pretty high, but the little foxes, notice it said the little foxes are the ones that spoil the vine. And because the little foxes are able to hide behind the foliage of your plants. In other words, you can be looking at your field and thinking everything is fine, and the little foxes are beneath the eye level. And because they're beneath the eye level, they're running around in your vineyard and they're destroying the blooms. Therefore, there is no fruit being produced. And we can all relate to that. And what you need to understand is this, that God is saying to you that even when you have the right connection, you still might have a parasitic draw in your life. That parasitic draw might be a relationship. That parasitic draw might be a friend circle. That parasitic draw might be a job. That parasitic draw might be a circumstance or a situation that is draining your energy, even though you're connected to the right source. And we have to understand that we have to be able to learn how to get rid of parasitic draws in our life. Notice in the analogy, it said that the crops were in bloom. That stage is the stage right before production of fruit. And maybe you can relate today, maybe you can understand today that you have gone through the process. You've planted good seeds. You're connected to the right source. You've fertilized. You've watered. You've plowed and you've tilled, and there is growth. But yet, fruit has not yet been produced. Check the little foxes that spoil the vine. Check the little foxes that's draining your energy. Check the people in your life that only take and don't give. Check the situations that actually are a burden to you. Listen, the Bible says that it gives another illustration of a farmer. It calls it the husbandman in the King James Version. The farmer prunes every branch that produces fruit. In other words, what God is saying to you is, in order to be more productive, you have to get rid of the parasitic draw. The farmer or the husbandman, he prunes it. He says every branch that brings forth fruit, he prunes it so it can bring more fruit. And so only imagine how fruitful you could be if you could get rid of the parasitic draws in your life. And when God removes something from your life, listen, so many times we're complaining and we're upset because something was taken away from us. We're worrying about that friend that turned their back on us. But what you need to understand is you didn't lose a friend. God pruned that friend to get rid of them so that you can produce much fruit. We might have lost a job and oh God, what am I going to do? It might not be that you lost a job. It might be that God pruned that job to get you to a place where you really need to be, where you can really produce good fruit. And understand this, even though you're connected, as we talk about being connected, understand this, you can have the right connection and still have a parasitic draw. Get rid of things that don't help you produce fruit.